Alright, trying this crap again. See if my camera freezes up. I'm outside of St. Louis off of Interstate 70. Just got some gas. Heading to Paducah, Kentucky. Is probably where I'll stop today. Heading to Nashville, Tennessee tomorrow. Get there around to a customer around 10:30ish. Still got 3 hours to Paducah, which means I'll get there about 5:30 to get back on the interstate. It has me going through neighborhood. I'm in the Berkeley city limits. Stop. Let's go. Been a fun experiment with this live streaming from the car, satellite, whatever. Having the disconnect issues with the camera though is kind of frustrating. Might be a bad USB cable. It's relatively new, but it is a cheapo whatever from Best Buy. I mean, it could be quality enough, but it could be the laptop too. And I was even thinking maybe it was because the camera was overheating. I noticed on the last one where it froze up, there was still my voice, it was just the camera. So I think it was just a disconnect issue. Yeah, I'm west of St. Louis. I don't know where I'm at, but I'm not that far from it. This thing does the same thing and freezes or loses the connection. Tomorrow I may try taking the Osmo down and stick the action camera up there. I just thought the Osmo was kind of cool because of the gimbal and physical stabilization compared to just optical in the action cam. Roads are definitely bumpy. We'll see if I get disconnect problems. Center lane seems to be the best. Well, it just sucks through here. That's better. Grabbed a protein bar and a couple of protein bars. They were buy 2 for $5. RX bars. I know that company's been sold, but they're still pretty good. And a bag of Snyder's honey mustard and onion pretzels. Wife got me hooked onto those. Got some raindrops coming in. It was raining this morning in Kansas City. I stayed in Liberty, Missouri, about 20 minutes north of my appointment in Kansas City, Missouri. Funny thing is, I've actually been to that exact commercial area twice back in 2024. I mean, literally, I think I was a mile down the road from a company I had to go visit twice. The camera is still back plugged into a USB hub, USB-C hub. So the camera's USB-C to the USB-C hub. I got power going into the USB-C hub, and then one USB-C connection to the computer. Now, I did have my iPhone, one of my iPhones plugged into that hub for charging, but I took that out of it, just maybe remove that out of the equation. That Suburban's ass is a little freaking dirty. Tried starting a stream earlier this morning when I was leaving Kansas City, but with all the rain and whatnot, I was getting all sorts of YouTube errors with OBS. Probably the rain and the cloud cover, but I don't know. I still may just return this thing and cancel the service. I already paid for a month of data, so I might as well just keep it for a month. Supposedly, it's 90 days to return it at Walmart. We'll see if that's the case. If I actually do keep this thing and mount this thing to the roof, I'm going to want to get a network cord so I can be hardwired to the antenna instead of wireless. Because if it's sitting outside on the roof of the car and the laptop's in the car, is there going to be enough connection strength for that? And I don't want to have to deal with that. Right now it's just sitting on the dash, so works okay. Even though I still get errors, but everything I read, this ain't gonna be perfect. 55 north to 64 towards the right. And this is 55 south. Yeah, I need the right two lanes. I mean, I still got 1.9 miles. Yeah, driving through here sucks. I understand slowing down because you're not too sure where you're going, but you don't need to do 10 miles an hour slower than the speed limit and everybody's trying to go around you. Looks like I can stay in this lane, but I may need to get over one lane, so I'm going to get over. Yeah, I might get behind a truck here and he's going slow, but I'd rather just be in the right spot. Because I think another lane opens up to the right here. Yeah, that's what it is. I think I'm going to eat one of my protein bars. Bumpy. I don't know if this lane ends, so I don't want to go around the truck, even though somebody else is going around it, but okay. I'm going to go around the truck. Well, even though that bumpy crap, camera's still staying pretty good. Welcome to Illinois. I was here before. And then 64 east and 3 miles. Once I get on 64, stay on that for a while till I hit Interstate 57 going south into Paducah, Kentucky. taste on the RX bars are good. They're a little rough to eat. Do it on this freeway for the next 57 miles. Ah, damn it.
There's a 6-minute slowdown caused by construction in 5 miles.
Yeah. Yeah, those protein bars or whatever, really thick. But they taste good. There's the construction traffic coming up. Probably should go ahead and book the hotel. Now, do I go Hampton Inn at 156 or Candlewood at 132? I mean, it's like $24 difference. I think I'll go Hampton so I can keep working towards my Diamond Reserve status. Yeah. All right, that's done. Yeah, I only need 13 more stays, and I hit Diamond Reserve, which technically that's only 13 days or nights, but that's 13 nights in 13 different hotels to qualify as a stay. So if I'll hit tonight, we'll make 27, which means I need 13 more. We'll at least get Saturday night, which means I only have 12 left to go. Yeah, it's easy to do by the end of the year. What does it get me? Nothing. Well, this traffic sucks. Well, at least that the road's smooth and it's not raining. TikTok or podcast? We'll TikTok it for now. Am I gonna buy any bourbon while I'm in Paducah, Kentucky? Probably not. But, may go check out a store. I mean, I bought a cheap one when I was in Reedsburg. It's a bottle I bought before. It's Redemption Bourbon High Rye, and I actually kind of like it. And for $30, can't beat it.
Oh, baby.
Yeah,
That's
it's
loud.
so important to have those two. The amendment banning gender affirming care for TRICARE and the one on sports.
Yeah, we need to be getting our troops ready.
My love for you, it's like diarrhea. I can't hold it in. My love for you, it's like diarrhea.
That's
I
wrong.
can't hold it in.
The old school way of growing up in this business was like, you have to be that guy on the billboard, and you can't show the struggle. You can't show the dark days or the anxiety or the depression or whatever else. TikTok is like allowing people to say, here's the process. Like, here's what it takes to go through it.
I'm going to show you how we build our staircases and why DeWalt has earned its place in our process. We start by using the bandsaw to cut the...
Get ready for the
Hey.
latest update on Miss Emily from Universal. Let me reiterate, I did not make that video yesterday to get anybody fired. I don't care who she supports politically, but what ticked me off the most is she was talking about Grindr in front of children, especially my children, at a children's theme park. That's unacceptable. Out of over 500,000
There's
views
a lane
between
closure
Instagram and
ahead.
TikTok, thousands and thousands of people tagging Universal. I didn't hear from them from Instagram.
That's one of the best things I've eaten, not just in this competition, the last couple weeks of my life. I happen to love eggplant.
Does the Bible teach any scientific facts that we later discovered to be true? Actually, yeah, like a lot. Okay, I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but like, what would be like one of the craziest ones? Oh gosh, okay, so like in Job, it talks about how like the Earth's core is liquid, but let's talk about wieners. Excuse me? Wieners. What? Like circumcision. I'm still not following. So circumcision was done to the children, the descendants of Abraham, to physically mark them and set them apart from the rest of the world. Yes, but how is that a scientific fact? Like, I honestly would prefer to hear about the Bible talking about there being like a liquid mantle in the core of the earth. Too late, we're talking about wieners. Okay, so what about that is scientific? Well, the Bible teaches that God originally told Abraham that he must do it on the child's 8th day of life. Yeah, so what's cool about that is what we discovered about vitamin K, which is what? Vitamin K is what allows your blood to coagulate so that you don't bleed out. Okay, but what did we discover about it that makes biblical circumcision scientific? Well, vitamin K is extremely low in a baby when they're first born, so like on day 1, if you circumcised the baby, they would die. Yeah, that's why like today they give babies a shot of vitamin K before they circumcise them. Correct, but if you were to do it on the 2nd day, they would also bleed out. Okay, and the 3rd, I get it, and the 4th, I said that I get it. In fact, they would bleed out every single day until the 8th day. Okay, but why? We discovered that in a baby, naturally, on the 8th day, their vitamin K levels will actually spike to 110%, and then on day 9, it will normalize at 100% of its normal capacity. Wait, so it's not just that on the 8th day they have a full amount of it, but on the 8th day specifically and exclusively, they have an abundance of over 10% extra? Yep, so that is when it is the safest to do that. Wow, that's actually amazing. Wiener science. Does the Bible teach any scientific facts that we later discovered?
As a woman, I refuse to play sports with boys. I refuse to play sports with boys. So circa 2013, I discovered rugby as a sport and realized it.
There's a 65-foot hot dog in Times Square that shoots off confetti every day at noon. I'm going. Maybe not tomorrow, because it'll be...
My coworkers need to stop asking me dumb fucking questions like, how was your drive? I don't fucking know. I was on TikTok the whole time, you fucking idiot. My coworkers need to stop asking me dumb...
Exactly. Since the right lane ends, let's move over here to the far left. Might make this a little better.
On the morning of November 7th, 2025, the Treasury Secretary of the United States showed up to a groundbreaking in North Charleston, South Carolina. Scott Bessent was there to watch Boeing start a $1 billion expansion of its Dreamliner campus. More than 1 million new square feet and a promise of 1,000 new jobs. Governor.
This is HP.
Man, so I was just out here watering my plants and minding my own damn business, and this dude comes rolling down the street on a rascal scooter, and he's like, "Hey, you like whiskey?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I like whiskey." He's like, "I'll give you a bottle of Eagle if you let me sniff your butthole." And I was like, "Man, that's fucking weird, bro." But anyways, he went on down that way. So if you see him, look.
Guys, enough with trying to call this shit a genocide. You know what the birth rate was for Jews during the Holocaust? You know, an actual genocide? Statistically, it was 0. Because you know what they did with pregnant women? Yeah, they fucking killed them. You know what the prisoners in the concentration camps weren't doing? Yeah, they weren't fucking. You know what the birth rate is in Gaza? It's more than 130 babies born every single day. According to Hamas, 78,120 people have been killed in Gaza since October 7th.
Fight back against the robots. Use Reddit. Dude, if you ask an AI to tell you what to do,
y'all have figured it out. Not bitchy. And I'm not sarcastic. I bitched it. Y'all have figured it out.
Hey, Aaron. What's the difference between a nun in church and a nun in the bathtub? A nun in church has hope in her soul. Hey, Aaron. What's the difference between a nun in church and a nun in the bathtub?
Alright, we moving again. It's weird. There's an O'Fallon, Missouri, which is west of St. Louis, and there's an O'Fallon, Illinois, which is east of St. Louis. All right, Mr. Mercedes van, you need to get over out of the way. I guess O'Fallon is named after the O'Fallon family. Move your bitch ass van out of the fucking way. I'm going around you. Yeah, fucking loser. go down to 1 lane, or do we go to 3 lanes and then back to 2? Because the right lane is closed in 2.5 miles. I have a feeling we're going down to 1 lane. Coming up on Scott Air Force Base. The truck wants to get into the fast lane and play cock block, trying to go around a car, but then he gets stuck on the uphill. Come on, let's all get around the truck real quick. So at least we went to 3 lanes and then we go back down to 2, so that ain't too bad. Camera hasn't frozen up again, but it's been mostly smooth this last part of this trip, at least after fixing the camera. We're back in the 70-mile-an-hour territory. I don't feel like I'm going too fast, even though I'm keeping up with traffic. Back to podcast, here we go.
Effect on germ labs, whereby the explosion
they just atomize it.
Push it, and it pushes it out faster. So it goes, you see, so it's non-effective.
You need to incinerate it.
And the nuclear weapon has a temperature that incinerates it and a speed.
Yeah. Most people don't realize how much being dehydrated impacts their performance, which is why for the last 5 years I've started pretty much every morning with Element. Element, though it's not like...
Genetic engineering is what's so dangerous, because it only takes a minute, hopefully reading my book or just having this kind of conversation, to get to the real heart of the matter with your X risk, and what the Defense Department calls a near extinction level event. That's, nuclear is different. That's like extinction level events. So we differ on that. But biological is near extinction. That group of government officials is going to stay alive, according to planning. But the difference in that is that, biological weapons are, once they propagate, there's no stopping them. And the number one reason is airborne. Airborne. So many different pathogens, Ebola, etc. They're not airborne. But if something's airborne, you and I are talking, we're both infected.
What are the elements of the perfect biological?
Pass with intention, fuckers, not just sit there taking your own sweet-ass fucking time.
Number one.
Transmission.
100% transmission. So what's interesting about COVID, and I just use this sometimes as a great example because everybody remembers COVID, those of us that, lived through it, that aren't a baby. And there was, for the first 3 months of COVID, the WHO was sending out tweets that said, COVID is not airborne, not in full capital letters. they believed that COVID was transmissible through, me passing this to you, and it's called a fomite. Not how it works.
Some pathogens are.
Some pathogens are, absolutely. But COVID wasn't. And they were convinced it wasn't airborne, and it was airborne. There was 8,000 people already with COVID before the WHO made us change that statement. And they were not doing it to be nefarious. They were doing it because they didn't know. There is so much uncertainty in biology. So much uncertainty. It's probably part of the reason why the U.S. got rid of its biological weapons program. The Defense Department likes to know. You can measure how many people you're going to kill with a bomb. It's called a circular damage issue. And you don't know with biology. And so the Defense Department, if they can't control it, they don't like it.
Yeah, I remember people were wiping down Amazon parcels. There was even a rule added into pickleball where you could do a paddle serve. So as the ball came toward you, you could scoop it up on the paddle, flick it in the air and hit it, because people were that worried that maybe the other person had picked the ball up, and if I picked the ball up and then so elements of the perfect biological weapon. First one is it's airborne.
Yes, transmissibility.
Transmissibility is airborne.
Yeah.
What else? How else would it be constituted?
Virulence, right? So it's case fatality rate. COVID, as we said earlier, 1%. So 100 people get COVID, 1 dies. That's a pretty low case fatality rate. Hantavirus, recently in the news. High 30% case fatality rate. So that's a lot of people. Right. The seasonal flu, by the way, is 0.1%. Pneumonic plague.
What's that?
We all know bubonic plague. Pneumonic plague is the aerosolized version of bubonic plague. Bubonic plague, a flea, from an infected flea bites you, you get bubonic plague. Pneumonic plague, it gets into your lungs and it becomes aerosolized. Pneumonic plague has a case fatality rate of 100%. Unless you get antibiotics into your system within 24 hours, not 25 hours. First 24 hours, you get antibiotics, you have a chance at living. If you don't, you die 100%. 100%.
What's the incubation period of pneumonic plague?
The natural incubation period is between 1 and 3 days, sometimes 5. Again, there's so much ambiguity in Mother Nature. Genetically modified plague, 1 day. So imagine a situation where this is the pathogen that I choose in the scenario, because it is what the Defense Department, FEMA, HHS, CDC, WHO is probably the most afraid of. It's called a tier 1 select agent. It's one of the most likely to be used, and it's a 100% killer. And now imagine if you could genetically modify that to evade cure. So imagine if antibiotics no longer work. And what I'm saying may sound like science fiction horror, except for it's precisely what was at the center of that Soviet biological weapons program of the 70s and 80s that we talked about a moment ago.
That's what they were engineering.
They were engineering a super plague weapon.
Did they achieve it?
Questionable. But think of how many decades ago. If they didn't do it then, they certainly have done it now. Here's what's the exact line from Dr. Christopher Davis, who interviewed the first Russian defector who told him about the super plague weapon. He said they wanted to kill, thinking of the Soviets planning a biological weapons attack against America, they wanted to kill all the people and leave the infrastructure intact.
Which you don't get with nukes. You get rid of the people, but you also have to rebuild the city.
Imagine just taking all the people out and just marching in, and everything that was theirs is now yours.
That reminds me of the video from Metallica, All Nightmare Long, after they launched a biological attack on another country, probably the United States, and then just marched right in because everybody's dead.
Yeah, it's just like pressing a delete button on all of the humans. I mean, you've got to get rid of the bodies, but it's a small price to pay.
If you wait long enough, they sort of disintegrate.
What was the goal of the Soviet scientists? Do you think it was primarily casualties or something more psychological?
Very good question. It was actually both. It was a twofold idea. It was create this mass death that we're talking about. And remember, maybe not the Soviet scientists, it was the Politburo, the sort of planners behind it, the military, the Soviet officials that just hated their American enemies so much that they came up with the most diabolical plan possible. And it was exactly that. It was just kill everyone, but also create such mistrust within the medical establishment. They wanted to outfox antibiotics, which normally will kill plague. The bacteria is called Yersinia pestis. And they wanted to specifically send America back to the sort of, pre-antibiotic era and have all the people have completely lost trust in the medical establishment.
How did we find out about the Soviet weapons program?
The program was huge, and it was secretive, and no...
Not too bad. I'm out east of St. Louis now, and I got 2 hours to my hotel in Kentucky. What the fuck? Alright, well, I'm going to email you and Fjord again tonight the instructions for installing that software. It's not going to solve the problem today, but... Oh, do you? Oh, okay. Alright, then, well, then call me on Monday or Tuesday, whatever's easier, and then walk you through plugging into it, because I want the controller report, because if there's no active errors when you're plugged into it, we'll have to look at the previous errors. But to answer your other question, if you want to release the brake, you got to flip it into primary, that switch that's on the driver's side near the batteries, under the seat. Maybe that's the reason why this thing's actually having an issue. Is it lithium or lead acid? Yeah, that doesn't tell me anything. Just because it's a Shadowhawk doesn't mean it has a lithium. That's weird. So if it's not releasing the brake, then that's interesting. Interesting. Yeah, it did. Right now I'm kind of stuck. I mean, is the car on the trailer, or did you get it off the trailer at least? And you can't roll it. Normally, you shouldn't actually turn the car on in primary, but flip it into primary and turn the car on. See if we get lucky and actually see if the thing moves. Yeah, technically it creates an error, but it might actually, I'm wondering if maybe the switch is bad or something, going bad or something. Something's getting across somehow. Kind of cutting out on me. Yeah. So, well, but you stuck it in primary or no? Try sticking in a primary now and see if it releases the brake. Yeah, do that real quick. Key off. I just want to, now that the car moved, keep the car off and then go flip it to primary, see if the brake releases. Yeah, and you'll hear the brake click. I wonder if we've got a brake switch going bad, because that could maybe cause your problem. I don't know that one. Yeah. I wonder if the switch, no, not that it was flipped. I think the switch might be going bad. Because if you yeah, the primary auxiliary switch, that's the tow run switch. Well, we might be onto something, but I'm still not gonna be able to do anything about it today, though. At least you got it moved, yeah. Yeah, that'd be a pain. Yeah. I mean, I'll still probably be on the road Monday, so I would just call the main tech line, leave a voicemail, and then whoever, if I'm available. I might get home Sunday night, but don't know yet. But if not, but at least I've got an idea, and I can talk to Robbie about it on Monday. Cool. All right, whatever works for you. Cool. All right, dude. Thank you. Bye. All right, done with that phone call. You got to listen in. Oh, yeah. Well, at least my Friday's easy. Relatively.
one knew about it from, until 1988-89. And then one of its leading scientists, engineers named Vladimir Pasechnik had a moral crisis. And he was a rare Soviet scientist who was allowed to leave Russia to go buy equipment for the biological weapons program in France. And that is where, and they didn't believe him, and they sent him away. And he went back to a phone booth and he called the British embassy. They took him very seriously, picked him up in a car, and a day later he was sitting in London in a safe house across the table, just like you and I are now, from Dr. Christopher Davis, who is pretty much the only guy assigned to biological weapons in the British intelligence, because there were no biological weapons. There weren't supposed to be. So he was this young surgeon commander, and he knew a lot about biological weapons. And I've interviewed him at length in the book. Imagine him learning about this and learning about the super plague weapon and going. And then the British told their American counterparts at the CIA it was verified. And that...
How was it verified?
We sent... So Davis and another colleague went to the CIA in Langley, had a discussion with them, told them everything that Pasechnik had said. These guys are MDs and PhDs, and the CIA was like, okay, well, we have to verify it ourselves. They sent Joshua Lederberg, who's a very famous Nobel laureate, to the UK to interview Pasechnik himself. And Dr. Davis was there in that room, and he said, Lederberg was like, the way he said it was, the scales fell off his eyes. Oh my God. Like, not only what have they done, but how do we not know this? They were manufacturing tons of plague weapon, tons of smallpox weapon. And the systems, the delivery systems were such in those days, they weren't airborne, truly airborne. They were going to be delivered.
The amount of people that are stupid enough to hit the brakes when they see a cop, dude, it's already too late. He already caught you. So don't even fucking bother hitting the brakes. You're just a fucking dumbass. It's like, what the fuck? The speed limit's 70. You're only doing 72. Car on full self-driving, teleport my ass over there and bitch slap him upside the head, going, fucking moron.
On like sort of low-flying cruise missiles and dropped. There was a whole weaponization that had to happen.
In capsules, in bombs, or in...
like they had engineered, and actually correctly engineered, that was part of the verification process, creating warheads that could survive this incredible heat, and their delivery systems weren't, but those were never used.
Okay, so that's how weapons can be used to attack, but surely everyone also needs to build fire defenses as well.
And this is the big conundrum.
There's a paradox there, right?
Yeah.
The effort to defend against biological attacks results in more labs being built, which increases the opportunity for a biological catastrophe, because you don't just have purposeful, deliberate leaks or attacks.
Yes.
You don't just have purposeful attacks, you also have accidental leaks.
Absolutely. And maybe no one would be crazy enough to use a biological weapon because they know about blowback now. You know what happens with a pandemic. Except a terrorist organization, that doesn't value life, shall we say, certainly in the same manner as, the West. But the lab accidents and the lab leaks are a very serious concern, and should be. But let's talk about labs for a minute, because I think it's very interesting to look at numbers. So we just spoke of, like, in the 90s, the U.S. finds out about the Soviet program. Clinton makes the use of a biological weapon a death penalty offense. The system really vamps up. The Cold War is down. Now there's a new enemy. The Cold War is over. The wall is down. Now there's a new enemy. It's definitely biological weapons. Terrorists start to enter into the fold. And then 9/11 happens. And most people forget or aren't old enough to remember that just a few weeks after 9/11, there was an anthrax attack against the Senate.
Yeah.
And that moved the biological, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, biodefense industry, call it what you will, into high gear. And that's where a whole new system of science unfolded to work on exactly what you're talking about, medical countermeasures in the event of a biological attack. And so, for example, there were 2 BSL-4 labs. That's the highest maximum containment biosafety level 4. The zoot suits, the space suits, and the hose with the air, and you're working in an autoclave, and there's it's an autoclave. All your hands are in gloves, and the pathogen.
Like an empty fish tank with gloves.
You've seen it in movies.
Yeah.
That's BSL-4. There were 2 of them. Defense Department had one at Fort Detrick. Civil sector, CDC had one in Atlanta. After 9/11, 15 BSL-4 labs. And over 1,000 BSL-3 labs. BSL-3 is just one step down. That's where you work on plague, hantavirus.
What do you work on in BSL-4 if you've got plague and hantavirus in BSL-3?
And this was very interesting to learn about this because I had that same question. BSL-4 is absolutely no known cure. It's Ebola, it's Marburg, it's Nipah. No known cure, and
I don't know Marburg or Nipah.
They're viruses. Some of
natural?
them these are all Mother Nature. So, and then the plague, remember, plague should be the plague bacteria should be killed by antibiotics. When you get into genetic modification, now we have a different story. Hantavirus should be able to be contained. But yes, it's a very good question about what's the difference between BSL-4 and BSL-3 if you're working gain of function in them. But these labs blew up in number. And they also did around the world.
How many viruses are you aware of that have been created, or bioweapon analogs
that bike was
has been
flying
created from scratch? Is there such a thing?
That, great question. That's called synthetic biology. And that is very new, like 3rd generation recombinant DNA, CRISPR.
Yes, I know I'm camping in the fast lane, but there's nobody gaining on me, and the road is smoother on this side.
Where you can create something
Type it in.
does not exist in nature.
Or that is a chimera gain of function of an existing thing that exists.
And that's not necessarily, that's sort of at the edge of synthetic biology. Yes, it does involve synthetic biology, but you can actually create a completely new
blank slate.
And that's where you're getting into the area, and certainly with AI.
Are you aware of any of those that have been made?
That is so incredibly classified. I mean, I would have to guess.
Your entire body of work seems incredibly classified.
No. I mean, this is what's interesting. People sometimes say to me, Annie, how do you get classified information? I don't. My sources would be in prison. I name my sources. So they're taking me up to the edge of what can be known. When we get into devolution, which is the program to save, a small group of individuals when everyone else is dying, and mass anarchy and insurrection unfolds across the United States and everywhere, that is a classified program. Devolution, spooky, evolution, devolution, okay? Classified program, but the name has been declassified. So, like 5 years ago,
you can't listen to my new album, but I'll tell you what it's called.
Or the river, right? I'll tell you what it's called, but you can't listen to it, right?
Yeah. Most people have no idea where their testosterone levels sit. But what if, as far as you're aware, what are the most risky or controversial experiments that have happened in bioweapons so far?
Well, okay, so technically they're not in bioweapons. They are in, biological countermeasure pursuits, okay? Because remember, biological weapon engineering is illegal. Just a few basic ones that are good to know, and also how old some of this technology is like right around 2000, 2001. there was a mousebox experiment. It was one of the first ones. So in Australia, they took scientists there, just wanted to experiment and see, and they took mice that had been vaccinated and they gave them mousepox, which is similar to smallpox, to see if they could defeat the vaccine, and they did. So that was a terrifying moment in bioengineering because you realize you could defeat a countermeasure. That's where you're, engineering something to evade cure. That's incredibly dangerous. H5N1. It was called the ferret flu experiment, and
did it again. See if I can fix it again. Definitely not an overheating problem. There we go. Now that's unplugging the camera and plugging it back in. I wonder if next time I can actually just turn the source off and turn the source back on. Hitting the brakes in the fast lane and nobody's ahead of you except for a whole bunch of shitload of cars and probably some wanker holding up the line.
Scientists working on that made H5N1 airborne. Before that, it was not airborne. So there's a lesser airborne version, which is if you and I are talking. Have you ever been at a party with someone, loud music, and they spit on you? Mm-hmm. That's called droplet transmission, right? Okay. And we've all had it happen, and you kind of go, right? It's just gross, but it happens. Definitely never rub your eye.
Never rub your eye.
Or your nose.
Okay.
Or put your finger in your mouth.
Okay. Those are the three.
That's how droplet transmission occurs.
Okay.
Eye, nose, mouth.
Right.
Okay. That's not airborne. Airborne is aerosolized. Airborne is just it's in the air and it's floating in the air and it can stay in the air. And so what scientists did in that 2012 experiment is they made something that was droplet transmission, and that's if I back way up and you're over there and you're not leaning in close to talk to me, yep. I'm not going to get your.
But realistically, that's what those big plastic welding shields that people were wearing during COVID. That's really all that they would have been good for.
Precisely, and that's what the mask does. Is it just if somebody spits on you, it's a layer.
Presumably, this is kind of necessary but not sufficient. Like, if something is aerosolized, it also has to be transmissible through saliva, like through droplet.
Absolutely.
Because droplet is basically liquidized, aerosolized.
Yeah, that's just a fact. Like if you gave, in my scenario, somebody gives somebody CPR, sayonara, and that has to do with how quickly you're going to then be infected yourself, right? Because this is, again, squishy biology. It's not perfect. It's one of the major problems with COVID, with your analogy of how it just became so terrible, because health officials refuse to say, you know what, we don't know. We don't know yet. They couldn't say that. Instead, they said, COVID's not airborne. And then later they had to backtrack. Well, imagine all of us that didn't know better. We're saying, why are they telling us X when it's really Y?
You're the boy who cried wolf. So, do you think it's fair to say that biotechnology is sort of the most powerful but also least controllable technology that we've got as a civilization?
I would say nuclear weapons are the most powerful, just in terms of destruction and in terms of temperature, right?
Got some
By all
raindrops.
means. But biological weapons are the most dangerous for precisely the reason you say, because they are Look, there's no barrier to entry. Nuclear weapons are controlled. First of all, you have to have uranium or plutonium, and that is
pretty hard to get.
Very difficult. Then you have to have a nation state that can afford that, and then you have to have a delivery system. You can't just drop a nuclear weapon in a field. You have to deliver it. That is incredibly expensive. The barrier to entry is high. It's why, thank God, we have not had a nuclear event since the first 2 bombs were dropped in World War II. Biological weapons have no barrier to entry anymore. You can essentially engineer a pathogen with very limited biology in your basement.
A desktop printer.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying, and everybody in the business of biological weapons knows that. And the solution must be to be informed, and it must be to have a capacity to understand what can really happen.
I guess you looked at the green, amber, red system that's used for desktop. Is it biosynthesizers? So I remember learning this from The End of the World with Josh Clark, which is my favorite limited series podcast 8 years ago. In it, he's talking about how bioweapons now, you can have these tabletop synthesizers, and in order to synthesize different DNA structures, they get run through a library that stress tests what it is that you're trying to synthesize. And you can do green all day long. Amber needs a level of clearance, and if you do red, there is you can't do it first off, and there is a FBI can kick your door down. But Nick Bostrom's got this really interesting experiment. He's from the Future of Humanity Institute, the same that Toby is, and he says it's only due to sort of luck of chemistry and physics that you can't create an atom bomb by putting sand in your microwave, by combining something that's very readily available with a technology that is easily accessible. And it didn't need to be that way. It could be the case that there could be a type of technology, there could be a type of destruction which is enabled by an easily accessible technology with or without some easily accessible resource. And yeah, as we democratize information and technology, each time that you do that, and you draw a ball. Sometimes they're white. They make the world a better place. Hooray. I'll have another one. It's white.
Damn it, did it again. Alright. Well, that time I only needed to turn the source off and turn the source back. Definitely, I think this is a USB connection issue. No? Maybe not. At least I'm back. I'm going to stop and get to the hotel, and if I feel like it, I've got a relatively short, but it might be long enough to reach just from the camera to the computer. Let's see if it's the cable or the shaking of the cable. Maybe this cable just doesn't fit very well. This concrete in here I think is new, at least in the past couple years, but it sure is frickin' noisy. Got 6 miles to go until I get on 57 South. Technically they combined together for a little bit and then they split off. 64 keeps going east all the way to Louisville, Kentucky. Yes, I know I changed lanes a lot, but that's because I don't want to sit behind this car even though I'm going the same speed. I like to be able to see around him. Or we'll let him go move over. And I'll stay here for a little bit. The speed's good. I don't feel like going around him. I just can't see around him. Yeah, maybe I'll go around him.
It's white, makes the world a better place. Then you pull out one and it's grey. And it makes the world a better place, but it also makes it a more dangerous place. A better place, a more dangerous place. But inside the urn.
Hello.
So that church is looking much better.
Good.
And so I'm happier.
Very cool.
And then Jake, who's the project manager on it, he was on vacation last week when I did the final walkthrough with the adjuster and his boss, the production manager, ops manager. So a lot of what I was wanting, I was going to Josh, his boss, going, you know, we talked about this last week. We even had a meeting with Jason. You know, where is this? Where's this, this, and this? So I told Jake, I'm like, I mainly threw Josh under the bus. I'm like, I threw you under the bus too. I threw your whole department under the bus. But, you know, just be aware, this was more of a, Josh knew what we needed out here, and it all came to play after you were gone.
Right.
So I'm blaming him more than anything than you.
Right.
I'm like, you should have been out here, yes. But also, they were sending him out to these big jobs we didn't get sold. So they, I'm like, they should have better managed this. You know, there's no reason why Josh shouldn't have been out here this whole time.
Right.
I'm like, it looks great now. You know, I'm like, I hope you're not pissed off at me. I'm like, but you do have to understand that what I was doing couldn't be done properly without the stuff running while we were working. And I got, people, big bosses from this church pissed off at me because I'm the one that's been there every day, so they know my face and they have my phone number. I've been the sounding. He's like, no, I get it. He's like, and we'll get it done right. So we walked through, and I told him what I've done, what's left to do, and what he needs from me, and yeah. So I'll be done with everything I need to do out here on Monday. But at least I got the parts done that's needed for their church to run on Sunday.
Cool.
And so, yeah, it's been lots of meetings. I'm going home. I'll be home at 5:30.
Cool. Right on. Well, I'll be to a...
How's your drive going?
Not too bad. I'll be to a hotel maybe before you actually go to bed. I got an hour and 30 minutes to go.
Oh yeah, I probably won't go to bed till 8.
Cool.
So. Cool beans.
Right on.
At least I get to come home to a nice clean house.
Exactly. Yeah, that reminds me. I got to send them money when I get back or get to the hotel.
Cool. Actually, I'll probably stop and get a burger or something on the way home. That way I don't mess with the kitchen. Because I don't have anything to microwave at the house and I don't want to cook anything.
Cool.
So the cats can suffer an extra 30 minutes, yeah, extra 15 minutes for me to stop and get some food.
Yeah, they'll be fine. Cool.
Alrighty.
All right, I'll call you when I get to the hotel.
Alrighty.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
But inside the urn of an unknown number of balls, or an unknown number of black balls, if you pull one of those out, it's game over. And that is the kind of technology that, as you make progress, this is a guy who is from the Future of Humanity Institute. Philosophy. He's the most cited philosopher under the age of 50 in the world. This guy.
Bostrom.
Bostrom.
Yeah. Yes.
If you pull out the black ball, but you don't even need to pull out the black one. If you just pull out enough grey ones, the risk begins to combine to the point where it's very dangerous. Okay, let's war game out your nightmare scenario. Day 1, what happens?
Explosion at the Vector Lab in Russia. And the reason that I chose that is why I chose many plot points in the scenarios. It happened once before. In 2019, there was an explosion at the Vector Lab. Vector is the BSL-4 facility where a majority of the Soviet bioweapons program occurred back during the Cold War.
Where is it?
It's in just outside of Novosibirsk, Siberia. Okay? And so that may sound like the middle of nowhere. It's actually in a small sort of village, a science city called Koltsovo, 8 miles from Novosibirsk. Siberia. It's, people are like, wait, Siberia? Is that a real place? It is, okay? Sounds far away. It's the 3rd largest city in Russia after Moscow and St. Petersburg. 1.6 million people. And most BSL-4 labs, or many BSL-4 labs, by the way, are just right in the middle of some of the largest population centers in the world. Tokyo, South Africa, Atlanta, right? So that's how it begins. I have an explosion in the lab, but unlike what happened in 2019, where there was no release, as far as anyone knows, there is a release of the pathogen. And it's pneumonic plague, and it's genetically modified pneumonic plague. And I take the reader through the military system of systems, as I have spent my career working to understand all that, to see how the DoD reacts, and to see how and when the president will be told, and to see how and when the different agencies get involved. And to me, that was just an extraordinary, learning curve and a sort of like, whoa, along the way. With the number one thing leading the charge that every sort of expert in any of those agencies told me was, Annie, if you can stop something with 12 to 24 hours, 12 to 24 to 36 hours, if you can stop it in its tracks, you can prevent a pandemic. But of course, because biological weapons are illegal, no one wants to admit they have biological weapons in their freezers. And so
the host nation's immediately going to try and cover it up or deny it.
And that is the natural response across history. To just, if there is an there was a famous case in Sverdlovsk in Russia in 1979 where they were weaponizing anthrax. They were milling it into powder. Anthrax is an interesting pathogen because it's called a dead-end host, right? So if you get anthrax, it's...
All right, now I'm on Interstate 57, heading south. Stay here for 46 miles until I get to Interstate 24. You even though I was in Illinois, I think I crossed into Ohio a little bit before I crossed into Kentucky.
Not transmissible. You get it in your lungs and you die, but you can't, it's not airborne. But it's like a super killer. And for whatever reason, it was the sort of favored, pathogen of the Cold War. We had an anthrax program too. So there was some guy, engineer in the Garrison 19 where they were milling the anthrax into tons of weapons, forgot to change the air filter. And it got out. And it killed 100 people in the town. And so the Soviet Politburo, you can imagine the generals with their tall boots came in and were like, it's contaminated meat. And it was, it was an escape. It was a lab escape. And they denied it for decades. Now it's known to be this kind of a situation. So a lab leak, a lab accident is really a very dangerous situation.
Would the US be aware? Because presumably they've got satellites that see if they'll have an idea about where potential labs are.
Yes.
They'll be trying to track, hey, has there been some sort of kinetic event that's occurred there? And what's the process and what's going on?
You're absolutely right. I mean, with nuclear weapons, we have satellites parked in geosync over all the facilities to look for that launch in the first second that it happens, and we see it and we know it. A lab accident is different. It's a different kind of explosion, but they measure it from space. They know it's not a ICBM launch, it's an explosion. And the reason specifically why they have eyes on the Vector Lab is not just because it's like a super dangerous lab that's known to probably have all the bioweapons, but because it's just a few miles from an ICBM facility in Novosibirsk. So the Defense Department officials I interviewed said, absolutely, Annie, we'd have eyes on it, we'd know it, and we'd call it in. But what do you do? What do you do? You reach out to Moscow through your State Department people. I spoke to State Department officials that work in the business of counter-proliferation. This is sort of like a fancy word for saying trying to stop, biological weapons in their tracks. They would make an overture. No response.
So now you're met with the do we drop the nuke or not question.
You are met with that. And
because you only have 12 hours, 24 hours probably at most.
Yeah. And that, that is a scenario that we've seen in Hollywood movies. It's actually could very plausibly be a real scenario. But who's going to do that? Because it's almost certainly going to trigger a nuclear exchange. Certainly not.
Interesting to think about the way that nuclear weapons work. At least the old style ones, where you had, even the new style ones, right? The H-bomb, you have a trigger, and then that is the explosion. And in this, you would have a trigger before the trigger, and the trigger would be the bioweapon leak. That would cause the nuclear attack, which would also have its trigger inside of a trigger.
And then you're talking about what's called a wicked problem. A wicked problem in Defense Department nomenclature is a problem that only creates more problems with its solution. And by the time you deploy the air quote solution, new problems have been created.
This episode is brought to you by Gymshark. If you're going to spend an hour in the gym, you might as well look hot and feel comfortable while you're doing it. Gymshark makes the best, unbelievable. Any host nation that's fucked it and dropped the ball doesn't want to admit it.
Yep.
Day 2, what happens?
So back up for a second, because I'm going to tell you some really interesting intelligence collection methods that are wild to think about. So the entire intelligence community in the United States at this point in a scenario is now focused on are people dying? That's what they need to find out. Or what is the Russian government doing that makes us think they know there's been a lab escape? And so there's NSA listening to the SIGINT. There's NRO looking down. So NRO is the eyes, NSA is the ears.
What's NRO?
The National Reconnaissance Organization. So that's space satellites. And then you have a really interesting collection component called MESINT, which is Measurement and Signature Intelligence. And it's sniffing. So we have sensors, or maybe we have sensors, I'll put it that way, in facilities. I mean, I'm talking like sewer pipes, maybe the walls, on signs. You can put a Mason sensor on anything that moves. It could be on a drone. It could be in a vehicle. It could be in a sprinkler system. And that is sniffing for a level. And the intelligence officers are looking for change. So when the signatures change, and that would usually have to do with chemicals that would be used by the Russian government, that would be deployed to try to mitigate the aerosol release.
Oh, that's interesting. What sort of chemicals can you do to try to mitigate this?
I write them in the book. They're a little hard to pronounce.
What do they achieve?
Well, it's like a dum-dum version of ammonia, right? So imagine if a pathogen spilled on this table, you know, get out the ammonia, like you would try and clean it up with rubbing alcohol, ammonia. Well, these are like industrial versions of those drugs. So, and you see spraying. You saw that. I remember when COVID happened in Iran, there were trucks going down the street with hoses, and people were just spraying. You know, government people were spraying the streets with an unknown chemical. I don't know what it was. I'm sure somebody in the intelligence community knows. You can do that in a totalitarian-esque country because no one has a say. You can't do that here in Austin. People would be like, they would freak out.
Yeah.
But in a place like Russia, you could do that, and that's being looked at. So I take the reader through these different, you see this entire billion-dollar industry go into effect to try and determine, has there been a lab leak? Are people dying? And if so, how? But the number one thing that has to be identified is, what is the pathogen? Is it a virus? Is it a bacteria? Very interesting distinction that most people don't know. A pathogen is a germ that will kill you. Germs are germs. We all have germs in our guts. But a pathogen is a dangerous, deadly germ, potentially deadly. Virus, bacteria. Plague is bacteria, not virus.
What's more deadly?
It depends. I mean, plague without a flu is a virus. You get the flu, the case fatality rate is 0.1. It's not that deadly. You get plague that's genetically modified to evade antibiotics, it's 100% death. So it depends.
What's the most deadly virus that you're aware of?
I mean, Ebola, Marburg, Nipah, they're up there in terms of, if you get Ebola, your chances of living are very low. Now, medical countermeasures have been developed from the 2014 variant of Ebola. There's a medical countermeasure called ZMapp, and it was given to 2 nurses in Texas, for example, that I write a little vignette in the book about it. And that was a medical countermeasure, and they did not die of COVID. The host died, didn't have it. But the mutated version of Ebola that we're seeing right now in the Congo, ZMapp doesn't work because it's a variant.
Right.
No reason to believe it's genetically modified. Mother Nature does her own modifications. That's the nature of evolution.
We talked about incubation period. Am I right in saying that is the amount of time that somebody can be exposed and it's in their system before they show or feel symptoms? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
In your scenario, how long is that incubation period?
It's very small. It's very squishy, meaning 1 to 3 days, depending on your dosage. So I told you, the guy who gave CPR to the infected person, that's a short incubation time.
Yep.
The person who's, germophobic and stayed back, and the aerosolization of it got a different dose, maybe a little.
At least I know the trick now. How that cable plugs into the bottom of the Osmo, yeah, I'm not too sure. I may try the other cable real quick when I get out of the van and at the hotel, just to see if it reaches. Even when I first got this thing, the little handle extender that goes on the bottom and changes where the USB port is, that thing was stupid and didn't allow power transmission or data transmission. So I'm going straight into the bottom of the camera, so I wonder if there's just a problem with it too. I mean, it works good enough for now. I'm gonna see if the cable fits, if I got enough length for it. And if that works, then I'll try that in between Paducah and Nashville tomorrow. At least I'm going to get to a hotel at a decent time today and just veg out, watch some YouTube, have a couple glasses. Shiny.
Be able to infect you?
That's a terrific question, and I was shocked by. I asked that same question too. So there's a guy in the book called Dr. Henry Hein, and he is one of the world's experts on plague. He spent his entire life studying plague and creating medical countermeasures for plague. He worked at USAMRIID, which is the Defense Department's only BSL-4 lab. He worked up there during the anthrax, and I asked him that question, and he said to me, okay, so for example, with plague, 40,000 plague particles fit on the head of a pin. That's how tiny they are. Very low dosage, like 100, 500, 1,000. You got it. Okay. Now this is what really blew my mind when Hein told me this. Dr. Hein told me this. He said, just to circle back to how little is known about so many pathogens. Today, with all the billions of people around the world infected with COVID, hundreds of millions or billions, depending who you're asking, we still do not know how many SARS-CoV-2 particles, that's the virus. We don't know how many.
It's like the critical mass.
We don't know. There's not an agreed upon number.
Okay, so you actually chose something that has a relatively short incubation window.
Yes.
Is incubation window and lethality usually correlated? Does something with a longer incubation window tend to be less lethal?
Another great question. And one that by the way, the questions you're asking are questions that everybody should ask and know, and that is like sort of sliding us toward a hopeful situation, because you can understand how complex some of these issues are, and they have to be thought through, and public health officials don't know everything, and the Defense Department doesn't know everything. And so your question was, one more time.
Incubation window and lethality, are they usually correlated? My reason being, you've chosen, I've played, what's that game? Plague Inc. on mobile. Did you play that?
I don't know about this.
You don't know about this? Double check. Can you chat GPT for me, Jared, see if it's called Plague Inc. I'm pretty sure it's a mobile game. It's one of the biggest games of all time. And in it, you design a plague. You design the incubation window, the transmission. You should partner with these guys. They'll be kind of morbid. Anyway, one of the things that I know you want is a long incubation window. Because if you've got a long incubation window, people can be transmitting without knowing that they're sick. you chose, you stacked the deck against the global lethality of your virus in this book, because you said 1 to 3 days. That's not that much. Some are 14 days.
Yes.
Is it Ebola? Quite a long time, I think.
Yes, and again, it's squishy. It could be several weeks. But and also to your point, if it's a short incubation period, it often has a burnout factor. So it's just, in other words, the person dies really quickly.
Yes,
and
that's
so
the exact point. Short incubation window, lethality comes up quickly, therefore they don't have time to transmit it. And you went for that, right? So you've actually stacked the deck against you. You could have the plague.
Beatles Memorial. Yay.
You could extend the incubation window out by 7 days. That's 7 days asymptomatic, unaware that you've been exposed to it, but still transmitting it.
Yes.
And that's where you get these real super spreader events.
Yes, and I'm going to go back to why I specifically chose that, and it's really creepy, okay? But before I do that,
I'm not creeped out yet.
Okay, let me tell you about one other point to your point about long incubation period. There's also being an asymptomatic carrier. So people, we all know them, who never got COVID or who actually tested positive for COVID and were simply not sick. And that's being an asymptomatic carrier, meaning you just don't show signs of the symptom. It doesn't affect your physiology the way it affects others.
This particular strain at this particular time, you didn't get sick.
And for example, this was a shocking fact I learned, polio. I mean, I just thought you got polio, you're paralyzed. Polio, only 1% of carriers actually develop polio symptoms. I mean, why did I choose plague? I chose it for an incredibly sinister reason that is based in science, because I am a nonfiction author. Biological War scenario is sold in the nonfiction section. The Soviets, and this is what Dr. Hein told me, part of the Soviets' super plague weapon they were working on is they engineered into the Yersinia pestis bacteria a gene for euphoria. Stay with me here. You get plague, you get flu, you get sick, you go home and you get under the covers. And you do not infect as many people as you would.
Lassitude, yeah.
They infected a gene for euphoria because they wanted people to be, if you have euphoria, you want to go to a disco. And what Hein told me, that really sort of freaked out the USAMRIID doctors and scientists and said, that is straight up evil, that you would actually think that through. And that's why I chose that, because I wanted it to have an analogy in the real world.
So does yours have the euphoria thing in it?
Absolutely, it is genetically modified to have euphoria. So the first 24 hours, people are spent euphoric, and they only essentially collapse into the disease when the euphoria wears off, and now they're shedding bacteria. They're infecting people like nobody's business, and they've been at places like discos.
Okay, so you got a bunch of happy people dancing around. How does that transmission chain begin in your book?
The transmission chain begins, I'm not going to totally spoiler alert all my plot points, but outbreak in Siberia. You happen to have a group of international hunters who come across a scientist. When they get on their planes to go home to 5 or 6 of the 7 continents.
In a great mood.
In a fantastic mood. One of them shot a wolf, you know. And there begins the spreading. I also have a scientist that goes to a priest to confess what he's done. And a person there gets infected who is a student at UCLA, gets on a plane, and is immediately in Los Angeles. So the outbreak, spoiler alert here, but this you learned this pretty much in the beginning, the outbreak happens in Los Angeles in a homeless camp. Because I learned from all the epidemiologists that I work with that the homeless population is so incredibly dangerous to public health epidemics.
Why?
After 9/11, the CDC created a nationwide syndromic surveillance system called BioSense. So you have 7,000, more than 7,000 hospitals, urgent care facilities, emergency rooms, feeding information to the CDC in real time about an outbreak so that an outbreak stops before it becomes an epidemic, before it becomes a pandemic. America's 800,000 homeless people are not part of that system. All of the epidemiologists I talk to, transmission occurring in that kind of a situation.
Did it again. There we go.
Ground zero.
1 hour to go.
75,000 homeless people. We have 4,000 homeless people on Skid Row with no health care.
64 miles.
With no facilities.
We're way past the time where America could have just nuked the host country.
We're at hour 24:36. Absolutely. I mean, you know, containment is possible. You could, if you had transparency from the host nation, right? If Russia had asked in my scenario.
It has to be done by them, though. There's no time. You can't even get to Russia in the amount of time you need to contain it.
Well,
So it's
we have
incumbent.
people in Russia.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Right?
Fair, but
Yeah.
you don't have. You're right. The resources to be able to galvanize 100,000 hazmat suit wearing special forces people to go and say, hey, stay in this area and set up barricades and sentry checkpoints and all that sort of stuff.
Although we actually do. Like, if you could contain something before it balloons and becomes huge, and this is the same in the United States, I take the reader through, once the outbreak happens, you learn. You know, we have a force, it's called a CBRN response force here in the United States. That's the WMD. Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear. They all train the same. We have 18,000 individuals that are ready to go at all times.
But that 18,000 people are in America.
Yes.
So it is on the host nation.
Yes.
It is on the host nation.
And Russia has those same, their troops are called Arkabaze. They have those troops too, and they could deploy them. And they do, and that's what happens in this scenario. Once we see they've deployed those troops, we know. But now it's too late.
Right.
Now the cat's out of the bag.
Right. So speed, from a containment perspective, from a restriction of how lethal this could be, the speed of containment is
everything.
Paramount, most important.
Everything, and it could be stopped. And then you have the same situation in the United States where it could be stopped. But this is where we get into your brilliant analogy, which is that no one trusts the system. And that's where you see in the scenario that I write, everything breaks down. And to have learned, as I did, that what really makes the Defense Department extremely uneasy is not necessarily the original outbreak, but the secondary effect of anarchy and insurrection that happens in response.
When does devolution happen?
So, in the scenario I write, because we're dealing with plague, which is fast, it's a fast killer, I take the reader from outbreak to anarchy in 6 days. That is how fast it happens. And on day 6, we have death.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get in that case. We'll get to that. So, homeless encampment, LA student, UCLA student goes back. LA's not great. Densely populated.
He's a pre-med student and he does pro bono work there at Skid Row.
Which is literally the worst place for him to be.
And he gives, that's a super spreader event. Those homeless camps are super spreader events. And that's what happens.
This episode is brought to you by Whoop. According to my Whoop, I've tracked nearly 2,000 days of my life /modern wisdom. That's join.whoop.com/modern wisdom. What are the contributing elements or the characteristics of a super spreader event? High density?
Yeah, poor airflow. So you got, tents.
You got pretty good airflow if you're in a
tent.
outdoor environment, if you're under a bridge.
Nah, it's tents.
Right.
It's inside tents. But more than anything, what you have is a very serious problem. First of all, you've got free clinics. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time down on Skid Row interviewing people about this. And you've got, no public health care. You've got long lines for these free clinics. And you have first responders. You have these brilliant nurses and doctors who work down there, a lot of them pro bono also. Diagnosing people, you're trying to differentiate between fentanyl overdosing, tuberculosis, acute flu, real serious problems that almost every homeless person has, physical health problems, with what looks like a bad cold. And, coughing up blood, another, mistaken for alcoholism. So I take the reader through the science of this so that you can really see the close proximity of alarmism and there's nothing wrong here.
Which everybody wants to do. They want to reassure the populace. They want to try and stave off the anarchy and the civilizational citizenry collapse. But also by doing that, you don't galvanize the sort of response that you need to stop it from happening.
And when you do galvanize it, what was really the most surprising to me was that once the Defense Department goes from what's called WARNORD, that's a warning order, to EXORD, which is execution order, right? That's like get ready to go and go with guys in biohazard suits to try to mitigate damage. It's too late. It's too late, and I was really stunned to learn that at that point the pivot is not let's try and protect the population, it's we need to protect critical infrastructure.
What does critical infrastructure consist of?
Everything that keeps society running. Roads, water systems, of course nuclear power plant, every single DoD facility. And that's where those initially the 18,000 Seaburn forces in their suits and their gas masks go, and then the entire Defense Department gets deployed. And what's really shocking is, again, this is not Annie's imagination. These are wargaming situations that are gamed out. There's a lot of classified ones which have been alluded to me. There's a lot of unclassified ones. And what's fascinating is all the unclassified ones, or these public health officials do these biological war game scenarios, or rather pandemic scenarios is what they call them. And actually also where the weapons are deployed. And they always end right where we're talking about now. Everybody gets sick, anarchy starts to happen, millions of people or tens of millions of people are dying, and then the game's over. And that is where I began, when I was reporting this, back in time, I was like, why is the game always ending right when insurrection happens? And it's because it's too painful to know what happens next. But the government certainly knows what happens next, and they have a plan for it.
What happens next? What happens next?
Devolution. And this is again from Craig Fugate, Obama's FEMA director, told me, everybody's heard of, DEFCON, right? DEFCON defense conditions. So if you're normally at 5, if you move to, 3, I think 9/11 it was 3. We've never been at 2. 1 means nuclear war. There's a plan called COGCON, Continuity of Government Plan, and that is continuity of government is exactly like it sounds. Like when the shit hits the fan, the government has to keep running, and that is the plan for devolution. So there is a select group of individuals who have been pre-chosen. They all know who they are. They all have go bags in their car, in their trunk. Really makes you think about all the people that you know that have a go bag. If they work for the government, they have been chosen, and they go. And they go to these different facilities.
What? Are the facilities in the US?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Have we got any information about them?
That is what's called a SAP program, so Special Access Program, like no-go, no talk about it. I'm not going to spoiler alert the very ending of the book, because I don't mean to smile because it's so terrible. It's all like, but Craig Fugate told me what happens to the president and where he goes, and I write about it in the book.
Unreal.
Not like he doesn't give me the coordinates.
I had a futurist on the show a couple of years ago, and he got invited out about technology, and he got invited to this very powerful rich people dinner, and they're talking to him about his work, about his books, sort of a little unsure about why he was there, and then there's this moment where the whole conversation, the whole tone in the room changed. One of the guys, the main guy that invited him, just turned to him and he said, okay, Iceland or New Zealand?
Yeah.
And he said, what? He goes, Iceland or New Zealand? And we're all talking about where to build our bunkers. Iceland or New Zealand? And actually, while you're on that, we're thinking about how we're going to keep control of our armed guards that are ex-special forces that work for us. What we're thinking about is putting them in shock collars. And if we can put them in shock collars, then but we also understand that, you know, apocalyptic wasteland, then well, that's not really going to work either. So yeah, I guess Iceland, New Zealand, shock collars, food, Bitcoin, no Bitcoin. What do you think? And he's like, what? Oh, this is why I was brought here. This is why you guys wanted me here, because you think that I've got the answer to this question.
The shock collar is an amazing detail. I have been invited to a number of those dinners, and there's like a little more specifics about is my Jeep 650 gonna get me to New Zealand in this amount of time, and you know that, but I've never heard the shock collar part, and that is brilliant in that grotesque way. But I would put my money, having interviewed a lot of special forces guys and CIA ground branch guys, I'd put my money on that shock collar is not gonna do jack whatever on them. You know, that's like, people can withstand that. But that would be the biggest problem, because no one's going to work for you anymore. No one is going to work for you. It's every man. You know, I did this every now and then in the process, reporting a book, someone gives me a quote that I go like, you know, it takes my breath away, and it makes me realize I can reverse engineer parts of the story from that quote. And the one on this book came from former Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. So he was the subject of the anthrax attack after 9/11, right? So the anthrax got sent to his office on Capitol Hill. And he's dedicated, you know, the decades since to this issue of biological warfare. When I asked him to tell me, he'd read Nuclear War, my book Nuclear War, and he said, Annie, unlike nuclear war, biological warfare will be deeply nightmarish. It will be the death of government. It will be the death of people. It will be the death of everything you know. And then he said this, he said, people doing inhuman things just to survive. And I don't stop thinking about that, because that idea that the only people who would survive biological war would be military personnel who never took off their gas masks, so never got the pathogen in their lungs, and these sort of Machiavellian solipsist loners who were just willing to do any kind of inhuman thing to survive.
Yeah, well, I guess there's going to be an inevitable breakdown in law and order, right? So the civil society gets destroyed, and it sounds like citizens basically have to confront the choice between obedience, survival, and resistance.
And how do you resist by yourself? You need like sort of a tribe to resist, and that's the problem, because if you're around other people, chances are somebody has it.
the thing that you need in order to be able to coordinate enough to push back against the. Okay, so over anybody else, right? The citizens don't trust the government. The armed forces that are meant to keep the citizens in check can't trust themselves. Nobody can trust each other because you don't know if someone else is infected. Hospitals are overrun. Doctors.
Hospitals are over at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep going.
They're just
keep going.
hospitals are morgues.
Hospitals are just like wastelands that no one wants to go near. But I interrupted you, and you were on a very interesting role.
It's just everybody treats everybody else as a potential threat, right? So,
yes,
biological warfare is uniquely destructive because it.
All right, I'm giving up on this camera.